Sky News political editor Andrew Clennell joins me now from Sydney to discuss the PM's speech and the economic package we expect as early as tomorrow. Thanks for your time, Andrew. Let's start with the PM's speech. A really important speech to business, wasn't it? It was a real push by particularly big business, he said, to pay small business promptly, even pay them in advance, to look after their staff, to keep them on the books and to do their bit. I think he used the term Team Australia as we all pulled together. It was motivational. There wasn't a lot of detail yet, though, about what the stimulus measures might include.
Yes, I mean, another interesting part of the speech obviously was his suggestion this could be worse than the GFC because there's more involvement with China here, whereas they were cushioned a bit by the GFC. But it's been clear since the election that Scott Morrison's not a massive fan of big business because he doesn't feel that they backed him in enough, and that he's going to do everything he can for small business and ordinary people, and it's the middle classes. It's like the Robert Menzies forgotten people sort of situation that Scott Morrison is pitching to. But of course he's got an important economic point here in terms of the fact that big business has more ability to be cushioned from the economic shock we're about to experience, whereas small businesses will go under. And that's why when this stimulus is announced, you'll see cash payments to small business. I confirmed that today. And you'll also see, hundreds of millions, as I reported today, going to the health and aged care sectors. You'll see export costs come off. You'll see potential cash payments perhaps to pensioners, although that's yet to be confirmed. But you'll see a number of measures which are about getting cash flow into the economy and helping small business in particular. But the Prime Minister wanted to make the point that he needs the help of state governments and big business. The government is not the economy, he said in his speech.
And look, I think the point about state governments lifting their own balance sheets to work for this crisis is important too, because obviously payroll tax, we saw the example in the United States, they're moving on payroll tax. Well, payroll tax in Australia is the responsibility and levied by state governments. So interestingly, the states often in a crisis head north to Canberra looking for dollars. It'll be interesting to see what they do in response, and I've just dealt with them about the management of the health component of this crisis, not just the economics in my editorial. I'm interested to know, there was all this debate, and I was there working in opposition at the time of the GFC, about the sugar hit, the sugar fix, getting those monies out quickly, but it not being good quality spending. I noticed in the Prime Minister's remarks we just played there, he's talking very much that he will not support recurrent funding, and some comments there from Labor. Do you think there'll be political support from Labor for what he announces?
You would hope so, Peter. I mean, they like to defend their record on this matter. If he puts around 10 billion, which I think he will in, everyone can see what trouble the economy is about to be in and the country is about to be in over this crisis. So you'd have to encourage it. We should avoid a recession at all costs. I'm sure he'll put the onus on Labor to support it, and they'd be mad not to, I would have thought. It's one of those issues so far they've decided to be bipartisan on quite wisely, I think, and they would want to do the same. But the key to a lot of the Prime Minister's language over the last few weeks is this bureaucratic word scalable. The point being, he wants to put some money out there, see how it goes, and then make decisions after that whether more is required. A real opportunity to do that in 8 weeks in the budget as it's timed. But that's how it will work, It's
and you're spot on about the scalable point. You're right, he is using that word, and that's precisely what it means. It's to avoid the risk they overspend when he needs as much as he can to stay in the budget cycle. But you don't want to be accused of not doing enough and then slipping into recession territory. I want to go on to some personnel issues in the New South Wales Parliament, because the former, or current actually, New South Wales Transport Minister, although has stood down since the fires in and around his area of Bega. This is Andrew Constance. Mixed messages. Listening to Alan Jones this morning on radio, he announced his plans for retirement. He says, this is Andrew Constance, once the bushfire recovery is complete. But it looks like he might be walking that back a bit. I'd be interested, people talked about him at one time, Andrew, as a premier candidate. Would he ever go federal politics, do you think?
I think I don't have any doubt that if he continues in politics, he'll be running federally at the next election, Peter. And despite the differences he and Scott Morrison have had, I think Scott Morrison would welcome him as a candidate because he'd be in a position to win back the only seat the Liberal Party lost at the election, Gilmore, on the South Coast. It's only about a 2% margin. Fiona Phillips won it for Labor, so against Warren Mundine, with Anne Submalis departing. But I think there's a very good chance he'd run for that seat, in which case what he says to Alan Jones is absolutely right, because he'd have to vacate the state parliament before the next election and around the time the recovery was complete in order for that to happen. He certainly hasn't ruled it out to me at any point a move on federal politics. He's long had ambitions for it. He doesn't have the numbers to become Premier. He never will. Others in there have the numbers. He's got limited support. He's tried before. So I think that's a natural career progression for him. I think he will retire from state politics, and if he stays in politics, that's the most likely move.